Hi, I'm David Skidmore. In today's lesson, we're going to be talking about quick interval changes. We've talked about interval changes a lot in this series of videos, and we're going to build on all of that knowledge and experience that we've gained thus far to become comfortable and relax playing quicker interval changes. We're also going to introduce yet another new stroke type, the one-handed isolated accent. This is when both mallets in one hand are playing simultaneously, but one of the mallets is playing an accented note and the other mallet is playing an unaccented note. Finally, we're going to discuss smaller groupings of notes within a musical phrase, which we'll call subphrases or slurs. First, let's talk about these quicker interval changes. The only way to play quick interval changes is to start slow, so that's what we're going to do. Take a look at exercise number 1. This exercise takes all of the notes, accents, and phrase markings from the right hand in measure 1 of the etude and the left hand in measure 10 of the etude and eliminates all rhythmic variations. This is a great way to practice a more difficult passage. Be sure to start slow. All of these interval changes are stepwise, so they won't require big motions. So stay relaxed and don't overdo it. In warm-up number 2, one of your mallets stays stationary on the same note, while the other mallet in the same hand plays a scalar motion. These interval changes are achieved the same way as every other interval change we've talked about in this series of lessons, by rolling that inside mallet between the thumb and first finger. Start slow and be sure to use a metronome. In the second half of this lesson's etude, we continue to focus on quicker interval changes, but we also introduce a new stroke type, the one-handed isolated accent. This stroke type happens when two mallets in one hand are playing simultaneously, but one of the mallets is playing an accented note and the other mallet is playing an unaccented note. So in the etude, starting in measure 13, you only accent the note which is closest to where the tenuto is printed. So for instance, in measure 13, the number 2 mallet plays accents, while the number 1 mallet remains unaccented throughout. And in measure 14, the number 3 mallet plays accents, while the number 4 mallet remains unaccented throughout. So how do we achieve these one-handed isolated accents? The same way that we've been manipulating dynamics throughout 99% of this video series, with stick heights. Think about how you would play a flam on a snare drum. A flam would consist of a grace note in one hand and a primary note in the other hand. So to play it, you would prepare by leaving the hand playing the grace note very close to the instrument, while the hand playing the main note would prepare the stick higher up above the instrument. Then, when you drop the sticks, you have a perfect flam. But if you prepare that flam in the exact same way, and the mallet playing the primary note moves faster towards the instrument than the mallet playing the grace note, you get what's called a flat flam, when both sticks strike the instrument at the same time. We're going to use this exact same principle when playing one-handed isolated accents. The accented mallet will prepare slightly higher above the instrument than the unaccented mallet, but both mallets will strike the instrument at the same time. Now, I think that a better way to think about this is to focus on the unaccented note. Think about how you would play a grace note. That note would be played very light. It'd be a very passive stroke. And if you focus on that and focus on the other mallet being a more active stroke, you'll get the result that you want. Take a look at warm-up exercise number 3. This is our opportunity to get comfortable with this new technique. So if I were you, I wouldn't even worry about playing the exercise in time at first. I would just play a few isolated notes with one mallet at a time being accented, while the other mallet in the same hand is unaccented. When this starts to work out for you, play the exercise in time with a metronome, starting nice and slow. Exercises 4A and 4B give us the opportunity to practice these one-handed isolated accents as they will appear in the etude. The accented notes in this exercise are followed by unaccented notes in both hands. So think about all of those unaccented notes the way you would think about grace notes. They're light, they're played as passive strokes, and every fourth note there's an active stroke, which is the notated accent. The last thing that we'll talk about in this lesson is slurs, or groupings within phrasings. Take a look at the phrasing exercise in your book. This entire exercise is linked together by one large musical phrase marking. But in the right hand, every 3 notes are also grouped together in their own smaller subphrase or slur marking. So what does this mean? Well, think about how we talk or how we write. Sometimes we speak in very simple sentences, and sometimes we speak in very complex sentences. So for instance, think about this sentence. First, I parked my car, and then I paid the meter, and then I went inside, and then I realized that the meter had expired. So I went outside, and I saw a police officer writing me a ticket. So I yelled at the police officer, and then I got another ticket. This sentence is a series of ideas that are all related to one another, and that's essentially what we're going for with these subphrases or slurs. So while there's a connection or a trajectory across this entire phrasing exercise, within that, there are these 3-note groupings that have their own smaller trajectory within those 3 notes. Across the 3 measures of this exercise, start the first note of each 3-note grouping in the right hand louder than the last note of that 3-note grouping. And start the beginning of each 3-note grouping louder than the previous 3-note grouping. Pay attention to the dynamics that I printed in this phrasing exercise, and all of this will make sense to you. These subphrases or slurs or groupings within a phrase add a really cool, complex, and interesting layer of expression to the music. Thanks for watching. See you next time.